I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead.
The war on drugs has entered a dramatic new phase. What began as isolated naval interdictions in international waters has rapidly evolved into a full-scale military campaign that is fundamentally altering the security landscape between the United States and Mexico. This unprecedented operation represents not just a shift in tactics, but a complete reimagining of how America confronts the transnational drug trade. A new era of military intervention. The Trump administration has signaled an unmistakable departure from conventional counter-narcotics strategies. The message delivered to Mexican President Claudia was stark and unambiguous. Drug smugglers entering American territory would face lethal consequences. This wasn't diplomatic posturing or campaign rhetoric. It was a declaration of intent that has since manifested in a series of deadly military strikes across maritime zones near Latin America. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth recently confirmed what many had suspected. American military forces executed coordinated strikes against suspected drug smuggling vessels operating in the Eastern Pacific. The operation resulted in 14 fatalities, with only a single survivor. This marked an operational milestone. Never before had multiple such strikes been carried out simultaneously within a single 24-hour period. The administration's justification centers on a controversial reframing of the drug trade. Rather than treating cartels as criminal enterprises subject to law enforcement jurisdiction, officials now characterize them as foreign terrorist organizations comparable to Al-Qaeda or ISIS. This semantic shift carries profound implications for military engagement rules and international law considerations. The Maritime Campaign, tracking the body count. The Naval Interdiction Campaign began in early September with strikes near Venezuelan waters. The inaugural attack targeted what administration officials described as a vessel operated by narco-terrorists with connections to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. 11 individuals perished in that initial strike, setting a precedent for what would become a sustained military operation. Subsequent strikes followed in rapid succession. 2 weeks after the first incident, another vessel was destroyed, claiming 3 more lives. When pressed by journalists about the legal justification, President Trump asserted the strike occurred in international waters and that cargo recovered from the ocean provided definitive proof of drug trafficking operations. By late September, a third strike had eliminated 3 additional targets. The administration alleged these individuals were affiliated with a designated terrorist organization, though specific details remained classified. Early October brought a 4th interdiction, resulting in 4 casualties aboard a vessel purportedly carrying sufficient narcotics to cause 25,000 to 50,000 fatalities. The operational tempo has continued unabated. Intelligence sources indicate approximately 11 vessels have been destroyed across Caribbean waters, with casualty estimates ranging between 48 and 50 individuals. But the geographic focus has shifted significantly. The operation has now expanded to the Eastern Pacific, bringing American military action dangerously close to Mexican territorial waters. The Pacific theater opens. Late October witnessed the first Pacific strikes. On the 21st, 2 individuals aboard a suspected smuggling vessel were killed. The following day, another strike claimed 3 more lives. Just 2 days later, 6 people died in an attack conducted just off the Venezuelan coast. The most recent sequence began when surveillance systems detected 4 suspicious vessels moving northward through Eastern Pacific shipping lanes. Overhead reconnaissance revealed telltale indicators, bundles visible within the boats that intelligence analysts identified as narcotics packages. The first coordinated strike targeted 2 vessels traveling in close proximity. Within seconds of missile impact, both boats disintegrated, killing 8 smugglers instantly. Shortly thereafter, a third vessel was located carrying 4 individuals. That strike proved equally devastating, eliminating the entire crew. The 4th vessel carried 3 smugglers. The attack destroyed the boat, but one individual survived long enough to activate an emergency beacon. U.S. Southern Command initially launched search and rescue protocols, though responsibility was subsequently transferred to Mexican naval authorities, a handoff that underscores the complex jurisdictional questions these operations raise. Beyond the water, planning the ground campaign. The maritime strikes represent only the opening chapter of a far more ambitious strategy. According to multiple current and former U.S. officials familiar with the planning, the Pentagon is now preparing for direct ground operations inside Mexican territory. This would constitute an extraordinary escalation. American military personnel conducting kinetic operations on Allied soil without formal invitation. The proposed mission architecture resembles counter-terrorism operations conducted in regions like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Somalia. Rather than large-scale troop deployments, planners envision surgical strikes executed by elite special operations forces. Delta Force operators, SEAL Team 6 commandos, specialized Air Force units, and select Ranger elements would form the operational core. These aren't conventional soldiers. They're Tier 1 operators trained for high-risk missions in denied territory. Their targets would include clandestine drug laboratories, cartel command centers, weapons caches, smuggling routes, and high-value cartel leadership figures. Operations would likely occur under cover of darkness, with teams infiltrating, executing their mission objectives, and exfiltrating before cartel security elements could mount effective responses. Intelligence would drive every aspect of these operations. CIA officers, working in conjunction with military intelligence specialists, would employ advanced surveillance platforms, including reconnaissance aircraft and armed drones. These systems would track cartel movements, map organizational networks, and identify vulnerable points in cartel infrastructure. Should ground operations prove too risky or politically untenable, planners have developed alternative approaches. Precision drone strikes against drug production facilities and cartel leadership remain on the table. However, even remote strikes would require American personnel operating within or near Mexican territory to provide targeting data and ensure civilian casualties remain minimal. The Mexican response: public defiance? Private cooperation? President Claudia has adopted a firm public stance against American military intervention. Following the Pacific strikes, she issued an unequivocal condemnation and insisted that no unilateral U.S. military action would occur on Mexican soil. During a public address, she emphasized that existing security agreements, negotiated over many months and finalized during the Secretary of State's visit, precluded such operations. This isn't new territory for Sheinbaum. Earlier in the year, when President Trump personally requested permission for American military forces to operate against cartels within Mexico, her response was direct and unambiguous. She told him sovereignty was sacred, not negotiable, not for sale, but to be cherished and defended at all costs. Even after Trump signed classified orders authorizing special operations forces to target cartel leaders as if they were terrorists, Sheinbaum maintained her position. While affirming Mexico's commitment to bilateral cooperation and collaboration, she explicitly ruled out military invasion or the presence of American troops conducting combat operations. Yet beneath this public posture lies a more complex reality. Evidence suggests a significant disconnect between Sheinbaum's rhetoric and her administration's actions. Consider the extradition record. In recent months, Mexico has transferred 26 high-value cartel suspects to American custody. These individuals, previously held in maximum security facilities, were placed aboard aircraft and delivered to U.S. authorities for prosecution. Former federal prosecutors note this extradition volume is unprecedented. Cases that historically dragged through Mexican courts for years are now being fast-tracked with remarkable efficiency. This represents a dramatic shift in policy, one that suggests deeper cooperation than public statements would indicate. The covert intelligence dimension. Perhaps most revealing are the CIA's drone operations over Mexican territory. Large MQ-9 Reaper unmanned aerial vehicles, the same platforms used for targeted killings in Middle Eastern conflict zones, are now conducting surveillance missions over Mexico. These aren't small reconnaissance drones. They're sophisticated military systems capable of carrying precision strike munitions. Currently, these aircraft operate unarmed, focused exclusively on intelligence gathering rather than kinetic strikes. CIA officers stationed in Mexico receive real-time data feeds from these platforms and share relevant information with Mexican security officials. The primary targeting focus involves identifying clandestine fentanyl laboratories, which emit distinctive chemical signatures detectable from aerial surveillance platforms. The critical detail: Mexican government officials are fully aware of these operations. They represent a significant sovereignty compromise. Foreign military aircraft conducting surveillance over Mexican territory with official knowledge, if not explicit authorization. This suggests Sheinbaum's administration has found a middle path, maintaining public opposition to military intervention while quietly facilitating expanded American intelligence operations. Strategic calculations and unanswered questions. Why would Sheinbaum adopt this seemingly contradictory approach? Several theories merit consideration. First, she may be managing domestic political pressures. Mexican nationalism runs deep, and any perception of capitulation to American military demands would prove politically catastrophic. By publicly opposing intervention while privately cooperating, she preserves political capital while still addressing cartel violence. Second, she may recognize that cartel power genuinely threatens Mexican state sovereignty. If her security forces lack the capacity to decisively defeat these organizations, American assistance, however uncomfortable, may represent a pragmatic necessity. The cartels operate with military-grade weapons, sophisticated communications networks, and financial resources that rival legitimate governments. Third, maintaining Washington's goodwill carries significant benefits beyond security cooperation. Trade relationships, immigration policy, and countless other bilateral issues depend on functional U.S.-Mexico relations. Absolute refusal to cooperate on counter-narcotics operations could jeopardize these broader interests. The road ahead. The situation appears poised for further escalation. American military and intelligence operations continue expanding in scope and geographic reach. The strikes have moved progressively closer to Mexican territory, and ground operations, whether acknowledged or covert, seem increasingly likely. President Sheinbaum faces an unenviable position, balancing national sovereignty against security imperatives, managing domestic politics while maintaining international partnerships, and confronting cartels whose power challenges the Mexican state itself. How she navigates these competing pressures will shape not only bilateral relations, but the entire regional security architecture for years to come. The fundamental question remains unresolved. Can this approach actually succeed where decades of previous counter-narcotics efforts have failed? Or does it represent another chapter in the long, costly, and ultimately unsuccessful war on drugs, now with even higher stakes and greater potential for unintended consequences?